What's up, everyone? We're back with another triple threat Locked On Bucks. And in the off-season, some days you get some afternoons where the news comes pouring through, and we've got a bit to get to today. Khris Middleton in for left wrist surgery. We're going to discuss that. I just found out from Justin, Bobby Portis is now leading the tourism charge for Milwaukee, so maybe he's the man that will get me back to Wisconsin. We'll see about that. Are the Philadelphia 76ers cheating the salary cap? We need to get to the bottom of this, and the take foul rules have changed. Did they do enough? I'm curious to see what you guys think. Let's get started.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on the show Monday to Friday. Also find some other stuff over at ESPN. And alongside me, we try and do this from time to time to get both of these co-hosts together from the Tech Foul podcast, and also with us every week, Camille Davis, who, by the way, has just informed me Tech Foul's having a little off-season. Unfortunately for Camille, that doesn't mean that you get off-season from Locked On Bucks, so she is still with us. And from the Bucks Radio Network, Justin Garcia. Also, who knows whether Justin ever gets an off-season. We're not 100% clear on that. We thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen or first watch of every day. Just glided past 3.7 subscribers, 3.7 thousand, I should say, not just 3.7. 3.7 thousand subscribers on YouTube. Tough start for me here. But that's good. But we want to get to 4 and beyond. So if you haven't checked us out, make sure you do that, and you'll be able to see Justin's lovely Milwaukee Bucks polo that he has on right now as we record this podcast. Let's get right into it, because like I said, there's actually significant stuff to discuss on today's podcast, and we always talk enough that it runs long anyway. But let's talk about Khris Middleton first of all. So the news came through. Tim Bontemps, a guy that I like very much, just tweeted out the news that perhaps Bucks fans wouldn't like very much, that Khris Middleton went in for left wrist surgery to repair a ligament injury there. And I'll go to you first, Camille, because I'm interested, because when I saw this tweet, I was like, well, it didn't really shock. I was like, that's not actually that surprising. Like, I understand the idea that you're going for wrist surgery, but I remember talking about it on this show a bunch of times. He missed 4 games between March 24 and April 10 with left wrist soreness. But it felt like, to me, a legit injury, because you could see very visually on multiple occasions that he was clearly bothered by something going on in the wrist. So what was your first take on this when the news came through, Camille?
Kane coming with the facts, bringing up the old injury reports. I mean, it makes sense. Like you pointed out, I did see there was a subsection of Bucks Twitter that figured something had happened, because apparently Khris Middleton was at a Brewers game with a cast on his hand. So there were fans wondering why he had a cast on, somewhat like when Grayson had a sling on. It's like, wait, what happened here? Did we miss something? So to see the news come out that he had wrist surgery was kind of surprising to me, because I missed all of the Bucks Twitter sleuthing until after the news came out. And I was like, oh, like, okay, well, like, I'm glad he's getting it taken care of in the off season still. I'm glad that the projection is that he'll be ready towards the beginning of the regular season, because if anything, the last few seasons have taught me, it's that we want to be healthy at the right time. We want to make sure that we're peaking at the right time. So if Khris needs to take this, surgery at this time to get ready, I am perfectly fine with that. I would rather the surgery happen now than him trying to play through it. And then next thing you know, in April, it's gotten worse. And now he needs the surgery before we head into the playoffs. So overall, I'm here for him doing what he needs to do for his body and making sure that he's going to be ready to play.
Yeah, shout out to Bucks Twitter. This is like the upgrade of real estate Twitter, which you know that I love. Real estate rumor Twitter. Nothing gets me quite fired up like that. But this is actually an upgrade with the injury stuff. And we know Grayson Allen had the finger surgery. Khris Middleton with this wrist stuff. And Justin, you're during the season, where you're doing the pregame, you're doing the postgame, you're all over this stuff in terms of injury reports, who's playing. You generally pick up on this stuff. So shocked?
Yeah, only because we're so deep into the offseason that this kind of, and I know he had, obviously the knee was the bigger issue, but this kind of seemed like this would have been sooner than getting towards the midpoint of July. And I think the thing that is, it's not worrisome, but that at least puts you on guard is the final sentence in the report over the surgery too. If he's expected to be available at the start of the season, which also it leaves the door wide open for, oh, well, it took a little longer than we expected, and he's going to be back 2 weeks into the season or something along those lines. So I think when you saw it at this point, it's that of, man, why is this mid-July that this is happening? And hopefully, I think we all assumed when you saw Khris Middleton wrist surgery, how much time is he going to miss in the regular season? So at least they're hopeful he'll be back for the start, but we'll see.
So I think they sort of said that and clearly going by the people that saw Khris with the cast on, so this probably happened 2 weeks ago, whatever, week and a half, whatever you want to say. So start of July, so that's 4 months until the start of the regular season there and there. So, positive of this, left wrist surgery, first of all, not the shooting hand, and also just the fact that it's a wrist. So, conditioning is not going to be a problem. So I'm actually not too fussed about that, particularly at the start of the season. And it's kind of one of those injuries that you would certainly hope that it wouldn't be something to worry about moving forward. I would certainly have more concerns, and I did have more concerns years ago about the hamstring and more concerns about the knee. And I'll tell you what, I got concerns about wet spots with this man on the court. So did he hurt this injury? Did he slip on a wet spot and try and brace his fall and hurt his wrist? Because that would make a lot more sense. In terms of the timing of the surgery, I thought about this as well. And clearly, because the Bucks don't like to disclose their injuries as much as the fans would like. Personally, I've said this before, even though not necessarily with the Bucks anymore, I'm not on the ground, but with the stuff I do here in Australia, I don't really care. Like I get why the fans are annoyed, but there's also not, they don't have to they don't have to tell you in the off season this type of stuff. It's just not what they have to do. I understand why the fans would like some transparency, but in terms of the timing of the injury, certainly surgery isn't always the first option. Now, he missed these 4 games with the wrist injury, and this is just a guess of mine, but I would suggest that they went through the process of getting the scans, getting the MRIs, and said, okay, there's nothing we can do about this now. You need to play through this. He probably had some time off during the off season, and as they ramp up their workouts, it's like, okay, there's still a problem here. This isn't healing itself. Maybe we go into surgery. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, Camille, but I don't. And I'm not saying you, Justin, but I definitely saw some conversations that were suggesting that there was some sort of incompetence here. But I would like to think that's not the case.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that's the case either. The Bucks organization has proven, if anything, that they're overly cautious when it comes to bringing guys back from injury. They do a good job of taking care of them. I mean, I even think back to years ago when we had Jared Dudley on the team, and he was like, the Bucks medical team really got me back on track. When PJ got here during the championship season, he's like, normally I play through this, but they're not letting me do it. Like, to jump, like there's no information that we know of publicly that would indicate that the Bucks do anything but operate, with the best intention for their athletes, even if it's not what the athlete wants at that time. So I wouldn't go that far. To Justin's point as well, like I get the surprise, like when I saw, I was like, oh, like you were just playing pickleball like a couple weeks ago. Like I'm a little confused here, but I mean, I think it could be similar to what you mentioned, Kane, where it was maybe they thought rest could help. We saw that with Brook Lopez, where they, for a while, was like, maybe rest can help heal this. And then they were like, okay, no, it's not going to work. We need to do surgery. So all in all, again, I'm happy that it's happening now and not later on in the season. And I hope that, the surgery is successful and that it works for him and that this is not a lingering injury for Khris.
Maybe it was pickleball. Maybe it was a, hey, just give it some rest and it'll be fine in the offseason. And then pickleballs would get him in.
Do we think at this point we understand the role that health plays in winning an NBA championship? So, Justin, do you think this is grounds for a ban of off-season pickleball moving forward?
If he misses significant time in the regular season, then yes. Or if we would have seen Mamu unable to score 30 points in Summer League because of pickleball, then I would also say so.
Well, let us know your thoughts on Khris Middleton, because as much as I sort of called back the idea that you would have a 4 to 5 month injury is significant news for a guy that we hope to get healthy. But again, I think it's it's another point that when you look back at some of the guys that were playing minutes on this team, or they wanted to be a vital part, Khris obviously missed with the knee, but Grayson clearly needed surgery pretty soon after the season. We know the issues that George Hill is carrying through the season. So these guys were pretty banged up towards the back end of the season. So hopefully they are taking the right approach here and getting it right. And look, last year they had Brook Lopez play one game and then shut him down for virtually the whole season. So this is a massive improvement. Come on, we've got to look at the positive of what's going on here. But there was some broken parts with the Bucks. And if you got broken parts in your car, then rockauto.com is the place for you to go to. You can save time and money when using rockauto.com. And maybe you need a new fuel pump for your Honda Odyssey. Now, if you went to a chain store, you'd be looking at about $353. Why would you do that? When you can just go to rockauto.com and get one for $216. It's a saving of $137 for those counting at home. And Rock Auto is a family business as well, which makes you feel good about going to them. And they serve people like me that have got no idea, and also professionals that have been working in the business for a long time. The prices are reliably low for every customer. And they've got everything you need. Brake parts, I should say, tail lamps, motor oil, new carpet, and whatever you need, they will have it there. So go and explore the easy-to-use website today to find out the solutions for your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box today? Now we sent you amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Let's get to a rule change. A much discussed rule during the season. So it came out today. I guess they had their Board of Governors meeting. I guess this is where this came from. They said basically from the 2022-2023 season, the take foul, the intentional foul in transition is going to carry a penalty. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going away, but it's going to carry a penalty. So it'll be one free throw plus the ball, which is obviously an upgrade from previously where they could just stop a transition play, set their half-court defense, and away you go. And I think aside from the fact that it adds time to the game, the biggest issue for me as a fan was just that it takes away the most exciting plays in basketball, which is the fast break dunks, particularly when you've got a guy like Giannis. The one team that comes to my mind straight away is Atlanta that just do it. It's so painful to watch how many of these take fouls come through. Now, Justin, one point that I missed that you pointed out. So the team that is going to the free throw line can choose who they want to shoot. So it's essentially a technical foul. It's not like if the Bucks, who's a sketchy free throw shooter on the Bucks? Do they really have? Oh, well, yeah. Okay, well, no, he's improved. He's improved, Giannis. He has improved. Giannis has improved. But okay, let's run with that. So say Giannis is the player that they give the foul to, which, let's be honest, we've seen plenty of times. The Bucks might say, okay, you want to do that? We're sending Khris Middleton to the free throw line or whoever it may be that'll go there and knock it down. So, Justin, have they done enough? I guess that's the big question I want to ask.
I guess I remember they were using this. Was it Summer League that they were debuting it for to test it out? I think, and I remember seeing the initial report on that, and they didn't have the details in. It was just you get one free throw and then possession of the ball, which without knowing, you as the team that was fouled can choose who shoots. It's not really any advantage because if it was the player fouled gets one free throw and then the ball, I mean, you're going to keep following Giannis or a guy that's a 60% shooter because the odds are he's going to miss that. So I think choosing the one shooter, they've probably done enough to curb it now that, if you're the Bucks, Giannis and Khris are on the floor together, Khris is shooting free throws on that and you get possession. I mean, if you really wanted to eliminate it altogether, you could have done a 2 to make 1 where you're guaranteed a point and then the ball. But I think it's a step in the right direction. And, we saw how this worked when they did the point of emphasis on some of the fouls that were changed a year ago and how drastically that seemed to change the game for the first month or two of the regular season. It kind of drifted back to what we were used to towards the end. But this was what we pointed to last year and said, all right, I like how this is going with the fouls, that you can't kind of lean in and get these uncommon fouls. Now just clean up the take foul. And they've seemingly done it. And I think the other thing to point out is this, I'm comfortable saying, is cleaned up. it was interesting, not to divert fully here, but to hear Adam Silver, when he was addressing the media yesterday, basically say, hey, I'm with you, and I'm equally concerned about load management and rest. So maybe that's the next thing that he tackles now.
Did they do enough, Camille?
Enough is an interesting word. They did better than what it was before. I was hoping 2 free throws in possession. To Justin's point, I do like that they added that you can pick who your free throw shooter is, but I mean, it's better. They did something, which is good. I won't say it's enough, but I will say they did something, and it's something in the right direction. Although I am going to miss Eric Name's exciting take foul tweets every time they occur throughout a Bucks game. So no, I'm happy that they changed it because this benefits teams like the Bucks who tend to play fast and get out. And we've seen so many fast break opportunities that have been thrown out the window because of the take foul. So I think it's going to improve the game. I hope it's not like the rules of emphasis whistle that they had before, given the fact that it's a take foul. I feel like it's so much clearer to be able to call on a more consistent level. So I'm hoping that's what happens, and I'm happy they did something for it. Again, won't say it's enough, but they did something, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, not enough for me. I don't understand. It's just a half measure for me. It's like, why don't you just do what every other league in the world does, or the FIBA leagues anyway, and just make it 2 in the ball? Like players are scared to do it in the NBL in Australia. I can tell you, because it is such a significant penalty, and it just doesn't happen. It just literally doesn't happen. And the other thing I'll say is, just please do not turn this into a something that you need to review like a clear path. If they could, that will be just so painful. Just make a decision. Like, it's very clear when someone's giving up a take foul. I just hope that they make these decisions and don't turn it into more delays.
Yeah, I mean, I guess along those lines, I mean, at least you should get the point. But to that point that you made, what's the difference between a take foul and a clear path, where you're just saying, well, he was already in front of him, that prevents 1 extra point from being scored?
Yeah, but sometimes, I mean, I guess the difference would be that for some, I mean, the clear path foul, I don't know what the rules are. There's some that I think are so clearly a clear path foul that aren't given, whereas the take foul, it doesn't really matter where the defender is. It doesn't matter if he's in front of him. It doesn't matter if there's anyone else behind. It should be obvious. It should be clear.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I just mean in theory. What are you telling me is the difference here when it's you're trying to accomplish the same thing of just preventing the fast break?
Well, I guess now the clear path foul, it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, we don't have to. So hopefully, I guess to your point, hopefully we don't need reviews at all.
Well, that's the review is, well, was this a clear path foul or was this a take foul?
Well, again, if they had just gone and done the right thing and given two free throws in the ball, then we could completely eliminate.
Maybe this is something that they haven't fully vetted yet, and it's going to take a game or two in the regular season before they think, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about the clear path foul and how similar this is.
One thing that was interesting, we saw Bobby Portis at Summer League, and we've already mentioned Eric Name. Second mention of Eric Name for this show. Caught up with Bobby when he was in Vegas. I just had a quick scan of that story before we jumped on. Nothing huge to discuss, but just the idea, or one of the points that Bobby made, and I think we all understood that. He said that, we lost Khris Middleton. We really lacked playmaking. We lacked ball handling. He's already said that he's spoken to Joe multiple occasions. He's excited about the idea of watching Joe and Giannis in the pick and roll and the lob threat that they could have. We've spoken a lot. Can the Bucks get more lobs? Is it possible for them to do that? It felt like an underutilized resource for this team. So it's nice to see that obviously the players are in contact. I know Joe's still in Australia at the moment until about the 25th, I believe. But I like the idea of some more lobs for Giannis, Camille.
Absolutely. And Joe's actually good at throwing them. So some of the dunks might not look as spectacular because we all know the best alley-oops come from the worst throws, but the guy just figures out how to go up and get it. But no, he was absolutely right. And I loved him pointing that fact out. And that was part of why that Boston series was like maddeningly frustrating, because it was like a juxtaposition of like, okay, we're without Khris Middleton. Going into it, I was like, it's a long shot. The Bucks could do it, but I would feel more comfortable if they had Khris Middleton when I make this prediction. So when you see them get to game 6 and it's like, okay, wow, they have a chance to actually close this out at home without Khris. Like, that's impressive. And then they lose game 6 and it's like, okay, now it's back to Boston, get blown out, lose the series. And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm proud of you guys for gutting through this without, your second all-star, taking Boston to 7 games. They're a tough team. But at the same time, it was like, okay, this is frustrating because if we just did things a little bit differently, we could have won this playoff series. And when you think about what was lacking, playmaking was a very big part of that, in addition to just having like somebody who was a bigger wing. I believe when we were on here last time talking about Joe Ingles and the ACL injury, before he got hurt, he was losing some of the athleticism defensively that helped him laterally. So curious to see how he looks coming back off of an ACL injury. Like, defensively is where I have most of my questions with Joe, but his fit offensively should be seamless with this team. And to see Bobby not wanting to give himself too big of a pat on the back, but also realizing like, I am a very like efficient, high volume 3-point shooter as a big man. Someone like this can elevate my game. He's not wrong at all. And I am hoping and praying that Joe has a successful surgery and he comes back, because he's an ideal role player for this Bucks team.
He's a lefty, Justin, which is, he always looks kind of, I don't want to say, well, it's not awkward, but he looks different. Like his shooting style, the way he's able to, as we've said, not an explosive athlete, but it's never stopped him being able to get that dribble penetration and get those passes off. I think it's always nice to be able to mix in a lefty in there.
They already got one in Drew Holiday, even though he
is he? I mean, we've discussed this. We've discussed this so much. Is he?
I mean, like he's obviously good with both hands, but I think we've seen enough to know the left hand is actually the dominant hand for Drew Holiday. But yeah, and I agree with Camille too that I think it's overall I like the move just because of his passing ability, which is really underrated the last few years and all of his time in Utah, and just his floor vision and how smart he is. That he seems like a guy that is going to seamlessly fit in with what Bud wants to do. My only concern is on the defensive end, especially coming back from the injury that he had, but I'm not expecting him, and I don't think you guys are, to be playing 25 or 30 minutes a game in the playoffs. That it's going to be picking and choosing your spots, especially bringing him back from that injury. So as long as he's ready to go at 100% and gives you that playmaking, I mean that's the one thing we kept calling for all of last year in the playoffs.
All right, are the Philadelphia 76ers cheating? Does they deserve an investigation? We will talk about that after I talk about Bet Online, the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. And as we look at some of the odds at Bet Online, Defensive Player of the Year, Joel Embiid and Giannis, both 12-1 for the Defensive Player of the Year. So there is a number of players ahead of Giannis and Joel Embiid in the Defensive Player of the Year odds at Bet Online. So you might see some value there. And what about Ben Simmons? Do you think he's going to come back and play 22-1 if you're curious about that one? And Kawhi Leonard, I mean, we just haven't seen Kawhi play, but he is 40-1 for Defensive Player of the Year, which has him around the same odds as Scotty Barnes and Chet Holmgren, which seems hard to believe. But I guess with Kawhi, the concern would be that he never really plays enough games. So I guess I can understand that one. But it's not just basketball on there. Baseball continues to roll on. I saw like the Brewers were trying to play in a swimming pool today. I'm not sure how that panned out for them, but football is not far away as well. It's already halfway through July, so I guess we'll be watching NFL again in about a month's time, which will be nice. But BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. There was a bit of discussion about this James Harden contract. It took a bit of a haircut, or a significant haircut, I would say, on his salary. Or it's around $15 million, whatever. Let's say $15 million. His deal is about 32 for this year. I think the cap hold was up at around 47. So significant pay cut. Through that, it allowed Philadelphia to do some different things. They obviously made a trade for D'Anthony Melton. We think will be a really nice role player, or is a really nice role player. They were able to give a 37-year-old PJ Tucker $10 million per year for the next 3. Daniel House signed that biannual exception for $4 million. So essentially, what this means is they've got about $4 million below the luxury tax apron, which means that there's still some maneuverability if they wanted to make another deal through the season. So essentially, Harden's pay cut has allowed Philadelphia a lot more flexibility with this team. Now, I didn't really think too much about it. And the reason I didn't think too much about it is because we know all these players, regardless of what they're earning, they're making so much money elsewhere with different deals and those types of things. So I guess the question which was raised on the podcast with Zach Lowe and Bobby Marks was just the at least discussion point or the suggestion that there should be some investigation. Because again, it's not necessarily about the income that Harden's making, because he'll make it back, whatever. But I guess what they were suggesting is that it's dangerous if teams are allowed to do this to significantly improve their roster, which we think that they have. So is Harden just a lovely bloke who has said, you know what, I've earned enough money. I don't need to. Let's take a bit of a pay cut. Or is there something sketchy going on? Justin, do you care about this?
I think it's interesting. And I mean, the most egregious example is Joe Smith way back when, where he agreed to the money under the table for the Timberwolves to make his contract cap compliant. And I think they were dumb enough to do that through emails or text messages. So they got found out.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the leadership group for the 76ers wouldn't dare have a written agreement with James Harden of take this much less so, we can do some other things and we'll make it up to you on the back end. I also think it's funny that that this is James Harden that we're having this discussion with. And I already saw a few people point out, well, and they were Sixers fans, like, it's only because you dislike James Harden that this is all of a sudden becoming a story. But it is funny that James Harden was probably, what would you guys say, in the top 3 or at least top 5 of most disliked NBA players by every fan base but his. And he's been called selfish and everything else. And now on paper, he gives up $15 million to field a winning team around him. And the first thing that's pointed to is they're clearly cheating. So they're doing something to actually get him that money, when maybe this is James Harden saying, look, I've tried it my way. It hasn't worked. So let's just do this and fill me with good players around me.
It might be the good bloke factor. That's certainly true. Camille, any intrigue or interest or concern?
I mean, I don't think that this is something that's unusual that happens. I mean, on a smaller scale, like Pat Connaughton just opted into a contract that surprised all of us. Like, oh, I thought you were going to get your money this offseason. But it's like, you kind of have an idea of like, okay, if you opt, like, to help us this season, if you can opt in and then you can get paid next year. Like you saw Bobby, it took a little less to come back and play. And one could argue that, James Harden is trying to win. We're hearing the reports now that he's actually back in the gym and taking his fitness seriously. And I'm like, I guess, okay, this is news.
Which club is that?
Maybe it's a new one that just opened in Philly or something. I don't know. Maybe it's his club, but yeah, I don't get too worked up about this. They were getting worked up when he got traded to Philly this past season, thinking about that's tampering because of his connection with Morey. But I feel like it's the same thing with the tampering rules, where it's like we know what's happening. Like free agency happens and it's like 20 deals announced at a minute after it starts. And it's like, okay, we can act like this all just happened now, but we know what's really going on. So it doesn't really bother me. Like, I feel like most teams and players do this because at the very least, the agents are aware of what dollar, you can check online to see salary cap ideas and understand what you could take less, or if you could take less and what that could do for the cap for the team and who else could come in and who's projected at what numbers. Now the players talk to each other. So I can't get worked up about it.
No, it's a good point though by Camille that we're talking about James Harden leaving a third of his money on the table to go from 47 or 48 down to Pat Connaughton probably left 50% on the table because he's getting $10 million or more a year if he signs a multi-year deal this summer versus just playing and picking up the option and playing for just under $6 million.
Well, that is the good bloke factor. Pat is considered a good guy. Bobby, in this article with Eric Name, said that, look, I've taken a pay cut 3 years in a row. And I did that because I'm in a place that I'm happy. No one questions it. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the possibility. Now, whether it was actually realistic or not, who knows? But Kyrie Irving opted out and then signing for the MLE with the Lakers. Do you then investigate that? And what are you actually investigating? This is why, to me, I more just come back to, and the Bucks lost the draft pick or a couple of draft picks, with the tampering stuff, the Lonzo Ball. Who was that? Who else was in that trade? Was that Kyle Lowry? Anyway, the Lonzo Ball deal that they ended up getting a penalty for. It's just so difficult for me to understand what is worth an investigation and what isn't. Even they looked into it, and this again was just one of the scenarios where it's like, well, like the Josh Smith scenario, like where he's literally getting 15 mil in company stocks or a sponsorship deal with the Philadelphia Inquirer or whatever, like something like that. Then fair enough if it's very obvious and traceable. But if not, I'm not really sure how you do anything about it. To be totally honest, it's just one of those interesting things that we don't see too often. And I think it's more noteworthy because while he signed for this $32 million, you've got Damian Lillard, who extended for literally double the money per season. He's getting up around 60 mil per year, which is extraordinary stuff. So I think that's why it's a talking point. But I don't really see that it goes anywhere from here, I would imagine.
The only thing I would add is I think it's going to be interesting that we talked about Pat Connaughton doing this. Bobby Portis did this year after year with the Bucks. James Harden now doing it and leaving a lot of money on the table. That I do wonder if this becomes a talking point within the Players Association, that I would imagine leadership isn't too thrilled with guys leaving money on the table. So maybe we start to see an edict of take everything you can get.
Well, the max guys, for sure. Yeah. I think it probably matters less for the other elite athletes that would be considered a role player amongst the general public. But yeah, the max players, I think it certainly matters when you look at some of the guys that will be earning more than James Harden next year. You'll certainly say that's a little odd to see there on SpotTrack if that's where you're looking up your salaries. All right, let's wrap it up because the Bucks are playing Summer League again. Bright and early for me, 6 a.m. Will I get up at 6 a.m. to watch the Bucks Summer League, or will I watch a replay? I think it's interesting to see how this plays out. But let us know what you think about the Khris Middleton situation. Bobby Portis and talking about that connection with Joe Ingles, the take foul rule, this Philadelphia stuff. Plenty to discuss. I'm sure we'll have lots of comments with people throwing in their ideas. So make sure you do that, and we'll do this again soon. Like I said, Camille, you don't get to just pick and choose when you have an off season. That's not happening around here.
Well, that's all right because one thing that's a little bit different about Locked On Bucks and Tech File is I get to grab my mic and computer and log in and just talk, and after we're done, I get to close it up and go on about my evening. There's no editing. There's no any other work to do. So, Kane, as long as you're handling all of that, you got me throughout my off season.
I'm an absolute workhorse. No one has ever been able to dispute that fact. So I'm going to do that now, Justin. I'm sure we'll be talking very soon as well. So like I said, jump in the YouTube comments. Let us know what you think. And we'll be back with post-game tomorrow for another thorough wrap-up of Bucks Summer League play. Speak to you guys then.